Good evening. It is wonderful to join you once again to share with each other the various deliberations and knowledge and wisdom concerning politics, interactions, and the philosophy and the science behind politics. We agreed that in the beginning of this class, we agreed that we would diverse over a large number of issues, including international relations, local government, political science as a theory, peace and conflict, development studies, environmental studies, sociology, psychology, as well as media studies. So you can understand, therefore, that the reason why we've had bulky classes is because we are engaging over a spectrum of courses. And we want to see how we can mix all of them into one bowl. Today's class tries to bring to the apex the issue of conflict that we have been discussing over the past few days. We have engaged in public policy, as well as in different forms of conflict, and how society comes into conflict with itself, as well as with the surroundings that affect and are affected by the behaviors of human beings. We looked at environmental studies. We looked at the impact that human behavior has on the environment and that the environment has on human behavior. We went deeper to understand natural resources, of course, the availability of natural resources, as well as the scarcity of natural resources, and how this triggers certain behaviors in human beings. Most of these theories were inspired by real-life scenarios and examples that sought to bring us into realization that the society we live in is not apolitical. It is, in fact, affected by politics. That as human beings, as we engage with one another, we constantly battle with the need to be politically aware, as well as responsive to our surroundings. Among some of the most vital concepts that we interacted with, I took particular concern with, for example, our cultural abilities and inabilities, and the extent to which we are able to impact the society, immediate society, as well as the distant society, by virtue of our beliefs, belief system, understanding, background, and motivations. This led us through a trajectory of thoughts to inquire that, therefore, should we be from a certain tribe, does that in any way impact the way we are expected to deliver in our political ideology? Should we be from a certain region? Should we be affiliated to certain individuals? Should we have certain thoughts? Are we in any way impacted by the environment around us? Similarly, do we in any way impact the environment around us because of the beliefs that we hold strong? We looked at the environment and how natural resources impact our behavior. Is it true that you and I are most likely to behave in a different way than we do normally? Should it be made known to us that there is an availability of certain resources that may better our lives? Gold, diamond, in some societies even just water. We are aware of the battle in Sudan, Egypt, and other countries over access to water. Can it therefore be assumed and theorized or hypothesized that the distribution of resources impacts our behavior? My dear friends, all of this, our various deliberations, can be summed up in power. I've tried several times to interact with the concept of power, and I must admit that each time it has come elusive to me to come up with a definition quite befitting of what can be defined as being political power. What is power? Yes, there are synonyms. There's authority, there's ability to control resources, there's ability to influence others, there is ability to access certain influence. But can this be summed up? Is it possible to come up with a collective understanding of power? Ladies and gentlemen, this is what politics in sum is. The interaction of human beings to access power. Synonyms: control, authority, influence, but all in all, power. My class today will be extremely brief because I am yet to pinpoint to what extent these concepts actually influence us and to what extent we influence these concepts. I therefore choose to summarize, to bring into some form of collective discussion something that you will understand, something that I have understood, despite my several questions on what we may actually mean. This topic makes me happy. It makes me happy because it is the cornerstone of all our discussions. If people are going to fight over resources, then what they are trying to have is control over the resources so that they may benefit from the distribution of those resources. They want power. If people are going to fight over the significance of cultures, that fight is not necessarily over which culture is much more prominent. It is which culture is in power. If people are going to fight over regional distribution, it will be because the geography in which societies are distributed entails that certain regions exercise power. So what is power? It must be important. If people of different walks of life are going to engage in different fights and battles just to access it, then it must be significant. It must be important that people access and have and control and influence power. The reason your local councillor will engage in significant brawls over who takes charge is because all he wants is power. The member of parliament wants power. The president wants power. The international community wants power. And that is why we have hegemony of states, whereby one state or group of states have an influence over the majority of states. They exercise power. What is power? Do you have power? Do you, in your individual capacity, consider yourself to be powerful? If you do, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to you that you are a powerful person, that you are powerful? What authority do you exercise? What level of influence do you exercise? Can you ensure that things are done in your absence, to your benefit, without any word from you? That is power. That without you being present, without you deliberating over issues, other individuals will work for your benefit. Other individuals will exercise their own energy so that you may benefit. That is power. Marxists bring to record, and I remember it brings me back to my youthful days as a young political science student, first year, interacting with the concept of Marxism and being completely enlightened by what manner of thinking these men had, Karl Marx and Engels, who interacted with the concept of Marxism, to say then that to a large extent ideology plays a role. In their understanding, ideology meant that a certain group of people must be able to influence the thinking of the greater part of society. Are you an independent thinker? Do you think on your own? Or are you under the power of others? What is your ideology? What do you believe in? What drives you? What moves you? What influences you? What is it that you cannot compromise? Your values, your value system. What is the power behind you? For many of us, it is individuals. We derive our power from the power of others. Those who have gone before us. The most typical example is those of us who aspire to be or who are academics. It's impossible to be an academic without deriving your power from others. In fact, the motto behind Google Scholar is that we stand on the shoulders of others. Our greatness is derived from the greatness of others. But in the political spectrum, to what extent does the influence of others impact on the behavior of the individual? Are you powerful? Or do you derive your power from others? If you are capable of suffering the injury of an axe over your shoulder just so that you may see another in office, whose power do you represent? If you are capable of publicly hurling insults at members of the public or others just so that one individual can access office, are you powerful or do you derive your power from others? If your activities are influenced by the abilities of others to reach certain climaxes, are you powerful? Or is your power based on the influence of others? The processes of liberal democracy derive from the inalienable ability for us to access power. Individual power, social power, communal, representative, geographic and geopolitical. When one member of a society assumes office, he does not only represent himself and his family. He represents the area in which he lives, the area in which he grew up and was raised. He represents the tribe that they come from. the region in which he identifies as being a member of, the societies in which he affiliates himself to. They all consider themselves to be affiliated to the office that the incumbent takes. This brings us to electoral conduct. Excuse me. We engage in elections because we want power. Democracy, therefore, is a contestation for access to power. Regular contestation. Yes, by the people, for the people, and all that definition tries to sum up the fact that within the people, there are some that must be in control of the people. Among the people, others must take up representative responsibility and charge over the greater good of society. My brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, it would be impossible for us to understand politics, whether we understand it from a capitalist, liberal democratist, communist, socialist, or any other school of thought. Our greatest influence must derive from understanding that what we have is in fact the contestation of ideas in order to establish which of these ideas is most appealing for the control of power. The danger comes when power results in the control of the minds of the people. That is deadly. The true foundation of political power must be derived in the control not of the minds, but, in influence of the ideologies. That is why they contest. That is why they fight. That is why they battle, because they cannot agree on whose ideology must be predominant at any given point in time. Power and conflict. Is it possible for people to fight over control? Yes, it is. Is it possible for people to fight over influence? Absolutely. And that's why it derives back to what we have discussed in classes before this one. That this influence, therefore, would be influence over resources, influence over cultural predominance, influence over religious predominance and extension and beliefs. That ideology, therefore, will assume the modern day definition of conflict. That is why Samuel Huntington becomes a very significant theorist to those of us who engage in modern day research on sociology, political science, and international relations. Because he predicts that in the future, in the world post-Cold War, the greatest source of conflict will be from ideologies and religious beliefs. And we come into 1991, and upon entering that new season, a new phase, we find ourselves with a change in the dynamics of conflict. It is no longer war between countries. It is war within countries. It is no longer interstate conflict. It is intrastate conflict. No longer do we find so much difference with our neighbors from across nations to establish conflict and military aggression towards them. The spec has changed so much that it has now become much more predominant for you and I to fight if we are from within the same country. It's more reason in this day and age to fight over your difference in tribes, your difference in languages, your difference in access to resources, than it is for you to fight over the influence on the international spectrum. International relations is continuously becoming more interventionist than it is protagonist. There are more countries involved in the practice of international relations who are working towards ending conflicts within other countries than there are countries that are actually in belligerence with each other. That should bring to our attention the differences of the world that we live in from the world that we thought we would be in. The international community was met with shock by the predominance and prevalence of conflicts that occurred within states. There were more conflicts between neighbors within the state than they were between states. Now you must understand that the international system at that point is designed to stop conflict between countries, because we have World War I, and then we have World War II, and then we have the Cold War, which brings us to the brink of the end of the world as we know it. The international community has completely restructured itself to a point where it has been able to manage conflict, but only interstate conflict. And it is at that point that, to the dismay and surprise of everyone, the eruption of conflict takes place within the state. People fight among each other. What does the United Nations do? How does the United Nations intervene? When there are principles such as sovereignty, which demand that each country has the right to administer over its own affairs without any intervention from external countries or partners. How does the United Nations, the African Union, the Southern African Development Community, the Economic Community of West African States, and all other such supranational governments intervene in conflicts that are taking place within the state? This, my dear brethren, is what brings us to the situation in Rwanda, where the international community is blamed because they did not act. But how do they act? The stipulations that exist do not allow them to intervene in the countries that are at conflict. They are designed to fight interstate conflict. When it is an intrastate conflict, it is a different matter. It is mediation. It is intervention for different purposes. It is very different from the one that has been designed and that is stipulated in the international books. Power is what is at question. By 1991, it is already established that the United States is in charge as the police of the world, self-appointed belligerent state. It is already established that the P5 shall constitute of the members of the Security Council, upon whom all decisions to do with global security shall rest, and the power to veto indeed. That the United States of America, the United Kingdom, France, Russia, and China will be in charge of all matters to do with security. This is despite the fact that the world is changing. At the time, these were the countries with the most threat because of the Cold War and because of the issues surrounding international relations. They were the most armed and the victorious states of the World War II. How then do we pick it up when things change? Because come 1991, things change. You have conflict within countries and not outside countries. And the majority of those countries affected by conflict are not members of the Security Council. It is countries in Southern Africa. It is countries outside of Europe. It is countries in South America. It is countries in the Middle East. How do you go about it? How do you go about accessing power? Who becomes powerful? Who is the definition of being powerful? Whether it is at the international level or whether it is at the local level. Because you must understand that the conflicts that are taking place within states are taking place because people are trying to access power. Leaders have fought for independence. They are trying to access power. They are trying to access control. They are trying to access influence. They are trying to access ideological predominance, power. Power, therefore, becomes the greatest source of conflict in the modern state and in the state before. Projectably right so in the state to come. Human beings will fight more for power than they will for anything else. Whatever other thing that we will fight over and be involved in conflict over as human beings will be for the prime purpose of ensuring control, influence, predominance, and power. We will claim to fight over the differences in our tribes, but in essence what we are fighting is which tribe becomes more powerful. We will claim to fight over our political parties, but in essence it is which party is powerful. If you cannot research on the intricacies of influence, authority, ideology, it will be difficult for you to continue with the classes that follow from today. Because I feel we have given a background and a foundation. But starting tomorrow, we must become philosophers. The discussions that we will hold, the classes that we will engage in, will be philosophical in nature. We want to bring out your creative capacity, your deducive nature. If you have a picture of a living room and there is a television, a sofa, a carpet, and a bed, you must be able to tell which one does not belong here. That is deducive intuition. Now that should be applied to your society, to your community, and to your day-to-day life. I'm grateful for those of you that have continued to join me on this journey. Kampamba, thank you. I'm aware you are very much present. Many others, Mr. Chilufia, thank you. Toela, everyone else. Posterity will be the judge. But for now, aluta continua. Thank you so much. And go and engage. Think. Are you in control of your environment? Are you powerful? Do you have power? Do you have influence? Do you have authority over your surroundings? Over your friendships? Over the things that influence you and the things that you influence? Because it is here with that it starts. If you cannot influence your most immediate environment, then political power will be elusive for you. So think hard and deep this evening over whether or not you are in charge. Whatever your answer will determine your next step. Thank you, and may God bless you.